Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Today, I'm excited to speak with Ryan Dennehy, who is a 3-times entrepreneur with 2 exits to public companies. Swarm Mobile was acquired by Groupon and Royal Media was acquired by B&QT Media Group, as well as being an investor and hands-on advisor too. And having experienced the frustrations that many business owners encounter in managing their IT infrastructure and support needs, Ryan's lightbulb idea to create a cloud-based, real-time, 24/7 IT support ecosystem laid the foundation for his current company, Electric. And it's that company and the vision to redefine IT support, but for a new generation. That is what we're going to be talking about today. But I've probably revealed far too much already. I can't help myself. So I will stand aside and bring Ryan onto the podcast right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Dennehy. I'm the founder and CEO of Electric. And we are the first automated IT solution for small and mid-sized companies. And Electric is my 3rd venture-backed startup. I had a media company I started in college that was acquired by USA Today Sports, and a retail analytics software company that was acquired by Groupon in 2014.
I must admit, you caught me on a bit of a strange week this week, because there's 2 things. First of all, I had an email from a lady in PR by the name of Brie Larson, and I thought, is that a Hollywood actress emailing me there? And then I had an email from you, Ryan Dennehy, and all of a sudden, for a split second, I thought it said Brian Dennehy. But you must get that a lot, right?
It's funny. I think less now than when I was younger. I think the more time that goes by I think back in like the 90s, he was in a lot of movies. So I used to get it a lot.
Like you said, you are a 3-times entrepreneur with 2 exit in public companies. Swarm Mobile was acquired by Groupon, Royal Media acquired by B&QT Media Group, and so much more. But you're now on a mission to set a new standard for IT with Electric. So can I just ask that you share that story behind Electric and what inspired this mission?
Like any good kind of founding story for a company, I felt the problem myself. So when I was running my last company, Swarm, out in San Francisco, kind of all started when we had closed on a round of financing and hired about 15 people, or we had 15 new hires starting in a week. And I had to basically spend the whole weekend setting up laptops for the new employees. And I just remember thinking, like, it just seemed kind of crazy that there wasn't like a piece of software or a tool where I could just sort of like hit a button and that would just happen. And so then as time went on, other IT related things kept popping up in the business. We had a 2.5 or 3 day period where we had to send our sales team home because we couldn't figure out why the phone lines and the Wi-Fi, weren't working. We had a lot of security related things, big potential customers would ask us to fill out these security questionnaires, and we didn't really have good answers for anything. And so I just remember thinking at the time, there's got to be a company that is automating all this stuff, and you can log into a dashboard and kind of just have a tool that makes everything really easy. But there wasn't. And so I asked a couple of my existing investors at the time, that was like, how come no one's doing this? And they said, well, it's a really complicated problem and we don't think you could really automate a lot of it. It's all very specific to the company. And I just didn't think that was a very good that just didn't seem right to me. And, I think elsewhere in kind of the back office area of a company, there were a lot of tools that were being released that were helping to automate other functions similar to IT, right? So if you take like HR, for example, this is a comparison I use a lot. Back in 2010, 2012, a bunch of companies sprang up that were basically automating things like payroll and benefits so that a small business could easily get a whole company up and running and easily administer payroll and benefits, without having to spend a ton of money on, consultants or full-time HR people. So I looked at that and I thought, geez, if you could really automate a lot of the HR and benefits kind of process with software for small and mid-sized companies, you could definitely do it for IT. And so, fortunately, we had a successful exit with Swarm at the end of 2014. And so I just kind of carried that idea, this whole idea of like automated IT with me, post acquisition, and really just started thinking about how I wanted to start this company. And so in 2016, I left Groupon and moved back to New York and started Electric.
And I love how here in 2020, you're attempting to redefine IT support, but for a new generation. I love that ethos there. But how are you doing that?
Well, we kind of took I don't want to say like a backwards approach, but a very different approach than a traditional SaaS company. What we realized in 2016 when we were starting it was that there wasn't really a lot of good data that we could get our hands on that would tell us what to automate, and how to prioritize, what kind of software we would build first. We had some hunches, but we knew it was going to be a really complex problem and it was going to take a while. And I just didn't really want to take guesses on where we were going to spend our money on engineering. I wanted to have a bit more data. At the same time, what we also realized was no one had ever sold IT support over the phone before, right? And so, historically, you would have all these local IT consultants, kind of go door to door. They would have a list of businesses in their local market, and it was a lot of in-person meetings and hand-holding and things like that. And so, I also wanted to prove that you could apply a high velocity inside sales motion to manage IT support. And so what we came up with was basically this model where we would start the company as a tech-enabled managed service, right? So we would have a software front end for our clients, but have a human support desk on the back end. And what that enabled us to do was we could go to market on day one with a full solution. We closed our seed round, I think, in November of 2016, and we were live with our first 4 paying customers in January, right? So about 6 weeks, because we built a really basic Slack integration. We built some basic dashboards that the customer could look at. But then on the back end, we had a support guy fielding tickets, right? Yeah. His name was Julian. We hired him from Geek Squad. He still works at the company today. And so what we were able to do with that was sign the customers, right? And really figure out what that sales process needed to look like. But separately, every time we signed a customer, they were sending us all of their IT requests, and we were capturing all of that data and really figuring out, hey, what are the things that really need to be automated first, either because they're really time consuming, or they're easy to mess up, or whatever, right? And by doing that, we were able to get enough data to basically say, okay, over the next 24 to 36 months, these are the things we're going to automate and when, and here's the impact we think that'll have in terms of, making our customer experience, really fantastic. And so it definitely was not for the faint of heart in terms of just the complexity of running a company that way, right? Because you sort of like, you have the operational part on one side, and then you have the actual software piece of the business, and the two have to really run in lockstep. And all the while you're selling this solution that's constantly changing. So definitely not an approach I would advise for most people, but it's worked out well for us so far.
And right now, of course, I'm locked down in the UK, you're locked down in New York. So in the wake of COVID-19, where more employees are working remote for the first time, can you just expand on why IT support is critical to ensuring tech works properly now?
Yeah, I think a lot of people realized as soon as their companies were forced to go remote, just how important good IT infrastructure is, right? And so when you think about all of the variables that go into making sure that your employees have the computer and the software and the permissions and the connectivity and kind of all of the basic core IT infrastructure that they need to do really great work, it's far easier to manage that when everyone's showing up to the same place every day, when there's an IT guy down the hall that they can go ask questions to. The second that you make everybody remote, any little gaps that you have in how that IT service was being delivered become very obvious very quickly. And then the second thing is security becomes a much bigger issue. If all my computers are on my network in my office, it's much easier for me to control, how safe and secure that connection is. The second that everyone's logging in from home, it's just a different ballgame, right? And, companies are getting hacked more and more often, even now, sadly, during COVID, because, they're using computers at home that aren't as secure. They're using a home network that's definitely not secure, and in many cases not secure. And so a lot, we're closing deals as of today, right? Customers are coming to us and basically saying one of two things. It's IT departments coming to us saying, hey, I had a lot of projects in flight, but now that everyone's working from home, I need a little bit of extra help kind of deploying a lot of things remotely. So Electric, can you help us with that? Or we have companies coming to us saying, hey, I have a local IT provider I've been working with for the last 5 or 6 years, but now that we're all remote, either A, it's clear that they haven't really been doing what they say they've been doing, or B, they're just not equipped to support us right now. So can you guys step in and help out? And so if anything, I think that this experience is going to teach companies around the world just how important having, a really well thought through IT strategy is. Then the other thing I think that's been a huge tailwind is just the increase in usage. Slack and Microsoft Teams, and people have a new appreciation for the tools needed to collaborate remotely.
And I'm curious, as someone that's set out to disrupt an entire industry in IT, what kind of feedback have you received both from IT teams and businesses?
For the IT departments, the thing that's most helpful that we do is we basically give them tools to do more with less. Right. So the kind of, stereotypical IT director that we work with is often, someone at a company that's, call it, 200 employees, 250 employees. And maybe it's just them. They're the IT director and it's just them, or maybe they have, 1 or 2 lower level employees working for them. In a company of that size, there's so much work to get done. You have to balance all of the requests coming in day to day that pile up, along with kind of the longer term strategy of what does IT need to look like in 12 months so that it aligns with business goals. And so for companies kind of in that size range, the IT director has a very, very tough job because they basically are constantly having to do 2 jobs at once. And so what we know and what I know from having kind of been in those shoes before is that they really need to stay focused on the strategy, right? And the strategy could be, hey, we're moving into a new office next year and we really have to think through what that IT infrastructure is going to look like. And that takes a lot of planning, right? Or, hey, we're going to start, selling to larger customers. So we have these different security and compliance, certifications that we have to go out for and we have to prep for. If you're an IT director and you have even, one of those things on your list, it's going to be very challenging to get those things done and do them well if you just have tickets and ad hoc requests coming in all day, in addition to all the other work you have to do to just make sure that, you're keeping track of software licenses, that, people have the right permissions to the right things. So what we've really tried to do is say to the IT director, stay focused on the strategy, and we'll try to take as much of all the other stuff off your plate, right? So for example, provisioning a new computer without any automation, if you do it correctly, could take 2 hours, right? Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing where, if you work with Electric, we get all those settings dialed in. You can just click a button and it just happens, right? So there's 2 hours times however many computers you have to set up that you just don't have to, that's just time you don't have to spend on it, right? Another good example is, we run our own support desk with increasing amounts of the support work we're delivering being automated. So, even if you had the budget to hire a couple of frontline support people, it would be tough to kind of replicate the economies of scale and the efficiency and the expertise that, a group like ours has. So really it's just about creating business leverage, going to the IT director and saying, like, stay focused on the stuff you're best at And, we can take whatever budget you have and stretch it 3 times as far. And so that's been a really effective approach for us as of the last, 12 months.
And I suspect that everybody listening to this podcast has had some form of experience or negative experience with IT and the old way of doing things. But I'm curious, do you have any other examples that will give listeners that before and after picture of how this new generation is ushering in a better way of doing things?
Yeah, so if you think about it, previous generation, you have a request that has to get routed through IT. So it could be something as simple as, hey, I'm a designer and I need the latest version of Photoshop on my machine. Well, there's a few different ways that would happen in the past. It would be, fill out a ticket with IT and wait a day or two and they'll get back to you. And then they, come over to your desk and install the application. Or you have to, bug your boss for it. With the kind of thing that Electric does is you could just send a message to Electric on Slack and say, hey, I need this application. And we can push it remotely and it's done. And then for the IT director, they can see that took place and track all these activities in a dashboard, immediately just cutting out an enormous amount of time. Separately, we have a self-service dashboard that's pushed to every device that we manage. So you don't even have to interact with us on Slack. You could just click the Electric icon on your computer, go to the list of applications and click install. And it just gets installed automatically, right? So really what we've just tried to do is take all of the most common things that, shouldn't be annoying, but often are annoying, and make them less annoying by automating away all of the steps that, people feel like they don't, shouldn't have to take.
And every business has problems with information silos. And let's be honest, IT does have a reputation for taking too long to get those essential business projects up and running, especially at a time where it almost feels that to stay ahead of the game, those projects need to be delivered quicker and quicker. So very often those teams will even completely sidestep IT entirely. So do you think this highlights how the current system just doesn't work?
Yeah, the problem with the way that IT is run, whether you're building an IT department internally or you're outsourcing it to, a local IT service provider, is that the lack of automation has meant that you don't get any real business leverage, right? And so if my company grows and I want better IT support, I have to hire disproportionately more people. I actually have to spend more money to get less. Yeah. And so that's where the problems, always originated from. Most IT teams are overworked and under budgeted. Right. And so our goal here has really been like, let's introduce automation. So even if the budgets don't change, you can free up enormous amounts of work. And as a result, the end user is going to be way happier. The IT director is going to be way happier. And the business doesn't have to spend more money to do it.
And I'm convinced that after a few months of thinking and working differently because of this global pandemic, life on the other side is going to be very different. And as a result, I really do think that we're going to start exploring new ways of working. But can you tell me more about why you think the future of work really starts with IT?
Well, think about it. How much time do you spend on your computer every day? Yeah. How much time do you spend on the internet? How much time do you spend using applications? How many more applications do you use now than you used 5 years ago, right? The way we like to think about it internally is, IT is business, right? That's just fundamentally. And so all of these needs are only going to get more important, that they get addressed correctly, in the coming years. And so, for us, our view generally is that as businesses buy and use more technology and business processes are increasingly completely reliant on the technology you're using, then, as a result, like having a really progressive kind of forward-thinking, intelligent IT solution that keeps all of those technologies running smoothly, it's mission critical, right? And so I think, we're one of the few companies that spends all day, every day thinking about what that future looks like.
So looking to the future then, especially post-pandemic, what's next for Electric? Is there anything else you can share with us today about the road ahead?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing is that the problem we're solving is so large that a lot of what we're focused on over the next, 12 and 24 months is simply getting better at the things that we already do, right? So it's automating more and more aspects of our solution so that the customer can continue to get things faster and more efficiently and more accurately. It's releasing a wider suite of tools so that we can actually make it easier for customers to get what they want in real time. So like a really good example would be, we can look at data and basically tell a company, hey, based on the size of your company, the industry you work in, and how you use your technology, these are the other tools that we think you should be using, or these are the ways that we think you should set up the tools that you're currently using so that you can get more out of them. And it could be something as simple as you're an ad agency who uses G Suite for Gmail and you've never enabled two-factor authentication. Well, Electric can identify that, hey, that's a really easy thing that we can just do for you, that it's going to make you a lot more secure. But oh, by the way, in order to do that, you actually have to upgrade to, the enterprise version of G Suite. So what our goal is to basically leverage the data to make those recommendations, be integrated with a lot of those tools so that we can just tell you, hey, we think you should do this, and then you click a button and we make it happen, right? So that's kind of the more of the direction we're going in over the next couple of years, is just really streamlining the way people interact with all their technology, right? Because if we do our jobs right, we'll just tell you that, hey, based on all of this data, like this is what we think you should be using, and click this button and we'll make it happen, right? So that's a lot of what we're focused on over the next couple of years.
Love it. And for everyone listening that would maybe want to delve a little bit deeper, find out a little bit more information about Electric, or even continue this conversation we start today by emailing your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, so our website constantly has new things being added to it. Our marketing team has done a phenomenal job, and so the website is just electric.ai. So check that out. And then if you're a company who thinks this sounds interesting or thinks that there might be an opportunity for us to be helpful to you, you can just email our head of sales, and his email is david@electric.ai.
Excellent. Well, I'll add those links to the blog post that will accompany this podcast. But I love chatting with you today. It's been a great story that you've got there. And I love how you experienced the frustrations that so many business owners encounter in managing their IT infrastructure and support needs. And then you had that light bulb idea to want to do things differently and create a cloud-based, real-time 24/7 IT support ecosystem. And a lot of people would have been told, no, you can't do that. But I just love how you've gone out there and done it and proved that it works as well. So, but more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you as well. This was a lot of fun.
So a big thank you to Ryan for coming on the podcast today to discuss why the future starts with your IT. And there's no shortage of tools available to make all those work processes more efficient. And a far greater issue plaguing small to medium-sized businesses is having the proper foundation in place to ensure that their technology works consistently, especially as I think it's 66% of the workforce deals with delays on projects at least 5 times a week. When you also consider on top of that, you've got traditional IT services that continue to remain inefficient, and a resource-draining IT department often requires capital that many SMBs just simply don't have. So the key message I'm taking from that conversation today was, yes, Slack has revolutionised workplace comms. QuickBooks, you could argue, has changed the game for companies' financials. Yet IT services haven't changed in the last 2 decades. So I cannot thank Ryan enough for coming on today and discussing why the future of work really does start with your IT, but why we need to redefine IT support for a new generation. Food for thought indeed. I'd love to hear your side of the story, your experiences, your insights. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me @NeilCHughes, or go to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. And you know what? I'm kind of glad it wasn't Brian Dennehy. I'm much happy it was Ryan Dennehy, much better suited for this podcast. So a big thank you to Ryan for coming on here today. Even bigger thank you to each and every one of you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.